again, to sort of, if I was to give a sort of, say one sentence that tried to sum up what we're trying to do, maybe that's not a very wise thing to do, to try and say it in one sentence, but if I was to, we might say something like we're trying to wake up to something that's beyond our everyday mind. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're invoking the imagination to do that. But then, even this word imagination itself can still be in the realm of the everyday. I mean, it might be a bit beyond the everyday, but even the word imagination can sound a wee bit too secular. We already think we know what it means. Yeah, we already think we know what it means. So I'm going to introduce you to a new word for some of you. That word is Shraddha. It's a Buddhist word, Shraddha, and it's usually translated as faith. But again, as soon as we say faith, that gives us another sort of problem, as it were, because faith in the English language has come to have connotations of, something like blind faith. And Shraddha is not that. It doesn't mean faith in the sense of blind faith. Sometimes Shraddha is translated as confidence, but then that gets away from the faith thing, but then it sort of makes it too ordinary. Yeah, it makes it too ordinary. So what I would suggest is we actually just think of this word Shraddha as a new bit of language into our vocabulary. Shraddha, a new word, just like metta, like a word like metta becomes something more than any English words can translate it. So one way you could think of Shraddha is something, you could think of it as something like our imaginative faculty. I really like that notion of imagination as a faculty that we can, just like our physical faculties, that we can develop. So Shraddha is our imaginative faculty resonating with the goal of human life. Yes, our imaginative faculty resonating with the highest in human life. My own teacher, Bhante Sangharajita, he says Shraddha is the ultimate in us, resonating with the ultimate in the universe. So it's that faculty that we've got that resonates. And what I want to say is we've all got that. We've all got that capacity to resonate with what's highest in life. I think it's what marks us as being human. One of the sort of things that makes us human is that we've got that capacity for responsiveness. So every time we respond to value, every time we respond to, for example, truth, every time we respond when we see someone else do something courageous, for example, every time we respond to something beautiful, whether in nature or in art, or I think more deeply in another person's actions, that's the sort of first glimmerings of this quality of Shraddha. So it begins with our human capacity for responsiveness. And then as that grows and as we respond to sort of deeper and deeper truths, it becomes Shraddha, yeah? But it's very important to realise that it's not, this quality of Shraddha isn't something that's added on to our sort of human nature. It's not something that we've got to somehow convince ourselves to feel, or something that we've got to add on to ourselves. It's more that we're taking our natural human responsiveness and sort of growing that, yeah? We're drawing that out more. Because although it is a natural human quality to respond to value, it's not the only impulse we've got, is it? We've got that as an impulse, but we've got loads of different impulses, even impulses that are quite the opposite. So this responsiveness that becomes Shraddha, can be covered over by, cynicism or things like that. You can be sort of blunted. It can be either blunted or sort of sharpened, as it were, depending on all sorts of things, the company we keep, how we spend our time. Very, very interesting. I was teaching another course this week, Newcomers Meditation and Buddhism course. It's about the 5th week. And I was just asking people how they got on, how they were getting on. And one woman said, the type of music I like's changed. And it took her by surprise. She said, I used to listen to all this techno and I was all like really angry and everything. She said, but now I don't want to listen to it anymore. And I was very, very interested that no one had told, I hadn't told her to do that. She found that, it's very difficult to talk about these things because you don't want to start putting in one sense. I don't want to tell you what music to listen to or not, but I was very, very interested that by meditating, by learning to meditate, something, what I would say was something had become more refined within her. What used to give her pleasure now seemed a bit sort of coarse and even ugly to her. And actually she was finding pleasure in different types of music that were a bit more refined, if I can use that word. So this quality of responsiveness, it can be covered over by other things, or it can be coarsened by how we spend our time, who we spend our time with. So our kind of work in the Dharma life is to try and see how we can draw it out. I discovered a year or two ago that the word educate means drawing out. So we can try and draw out that quality and try and give it more and more value to respond to, if you see what I mean. So that's why we've been talking about in the last few weeks about engaging more with art and nature and allowing that to affect us. So again, it's not just the actual act of going to an art gallery or whatever and like looking at all the pictures through our mobile phones. It's like allowing ourselves to be affected, yeah. And in this way, ordinary human responsiveness grows into this quality of Shraddha, of the ultimate in us, responding to the ultimate in the universe, of responding to more and more value. A Buddha would be responding to value all the time and would see value everywhere, would just see value everywhere and be sort of quivering with responsiveness to value. I think the other important thing about talking about this trajectory of responsiveness to Shraddha is that it's very important in a way where all of you kind of here on the course learning about the Dharma, you're in a very fortunate position in a way, I always think, just perhaps just beginning this journey, because, well, what am I trying to say? Let me just start again with this bit and you'll see what I mean. What I'm trying to say is that responsiveness, you've got to be careful that it is your own responsiveness. It's not your idea of what responsiveness should be. Sometimes, especially if you've been practicing Buddhism for a long time, you can start getting an idea into your head of what a good Buddhist should look like, and you can start trying to be that kind of almost caricature of what you think a spiritual person should be like. Do you see what I mean? So you can, and if you do that, you might be able to get you might be able to go so far, but it will all come crashing down like a sort of castle on the sand. It's like your actual responsiveness will be here, but you've kind of ignored that and you've thought, no, I shouldn't be doing this or that. A sort of real Buddhist or a real sort of spiritually person should have these different values, and you try and sort of force yourself to grow in a direction that's not it hasn't got any foundation in your own responsiveness. Yeah, so you've got to do you see how that can go? That will go like terribly wrong, probably sooner rather than later. It's like you're building an edifice of a sort of some sort of idea of a spiritual life that's just built on nothing. So what we've got to do is actually much kind of deeper, more intelligent work actually, of starting to look to where we do respond. What is meaningful to us? Where do we find beauty? Where do we see truth? That's a bit problematic as well, because it's not that these things are totally subjective either. But maybe leave that aside for the moment and just sort of start to look for where our responsiveness is, and at the same time draw it out, sort of educate it, cultivate it. Don't just, you can't just leave it, to do its own thing. You've got to find where it is and then give it the right conditions, the inner conditions, and then the conditions, like for example, what company we keep, how we spend our time. And then it begins to flourish into this quality of Shraddha, which is the imaginative faculty apprehending dharmic truths. Yeah, there's the sort of world of scientific truth, and there's the world of dharmic truth. They're both valid, but the world of scientific truth can be, well, we perceive that with our physical senses and so on, including our mind. But the world of dharmic truth can only be perceived by the imagination, by the imaginative faculty. So we have to cultivate it. And the cultivating it is this cultivating of Shraddha. Let me just pause there. I'm just going to pause there for a minute and see if there's any reflections or questions on what I've said. Yes.
You're saying about maybe going down, trying to be a good Buddhist, but not recognising actually where you are with responding.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, those things in this bit, they may not, are we saying that they may not necessarily be the answers, but there might be things behind them, or but not shutting them away.
Not shutting them away, but not seeing them. Maybe even thinking of that there might not be an end. We can keep, not in a sense, nothing's an end. We can keep looking deeper. So say maybe can you think of any maybe you could give us an example from your own life.
It's quite hard to give an example.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So but I think you're definitely on the right track. So it's not shutting things away.
But a silly example might be things, loving nice cars.
Okay, yeah.
Sort of thinking I shouldn't love nice cars.
Yeah.
But then, if you think, well, I will love nice cars, and then you realise you get in a nice car and you get bored of it. So I'm just trying to...
Yeah, okay, but or I could take it a slightly other direction, because I think that's a good example. Okay, so say you love nice cars, but you think, oh no, that's not very Buddhist, I'm meant to be this Buddhisty person, renunciation and all that. In a way, I would then start to ask you, well, what do I love about it? Do you know what I mean? What do I love about the nice car? Is it the shininess? Is it the fact that it goes really fast? Is it that you feel free when you're driving along? So you start to look for the quality of that, yeah? So that's what I mean by looking deeper at it. I mean, imagine, I don't even drive any car, but imagine there must be a sort of freedom, and that's what all the adverts look like, don't they? The freedom of driving around these roads. So you start to see, so actually, it's the quality of freedom that you're seeking. Do you see what I mean? And then you can keep looking for that But you might find it in, not that you've got to stop like on the cars, but you sort of can refine that, and then one day you might realise, oh well, I don't need the fast car anymore, or you might not, you might still have the car. I mean, there's no reason why a Buddha can drive a fast car, do you know what I mean? But, so it's not that you're, actually in this approach, you're not trying to go to sort of look for what's limiting in the thing necessarily. It's actually you're trying to see what's more deeply valuable. Yeah, does that sort of make sense? Rather than too quickly going, oh no, that's not very spiritual, I should just be spending all my time meditating and, yeah?
But
yeah.
I guess on the other hand, if you look at the fast car, your obsession with fast cars or whatever, and you see actually there is no deeper value there, or I explore that, and I find that it doesn't, my liking of fast cars doesn't actually align with my deeper values, then it might fall away.
Well, it might fall away, but I think, yes, so that's a sort of another approach, but I think it's quite interesting in this approach is to see what is it you love about it. It's almost like, because it's probably even a metaphor for something, there's some sort of beauty in that, just something that's beautifully designed or beautifully works well. So in this approach, like see what you love, really see what you love and see what you love.
The car.
What's that?
I'm sorry to, if you can't afford the car, so it's always something you'll never get, so you can't explore it.
Well, more explore your love of it, see what is the attraction, what is it that you're attracted to. You don't need to have the car, but you can see what is the attraction of it. And then you can actually, rather than just dismissing it and sort of, I would go with what is beautiful about it to you. Do you see what I mean? And then you start to realise something about yourself. Yeah, so you, yes, yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, go on,
It's very
Claire.
interesting that you actually talked about how adverts drew the metaphor of freedom.
Yeah.
I think in general the advertising industry is extremely successful at getting under what things are and actually presenting us with some kind of perspective around things. What some of the compulsions are that are driving us.
Yes, they are, but we could go down that track, but I'm trying to, would be a valid approach, but I'm actually, in this approach, trying to get us to look at what's actually positive, because I think we can be, because we've got this notion of renunciation, and we've got to, I don't know, we can be too quick to think, Buddhism's all about not having desire and da-da-da, but actually that our desire is necessary, yeah. But what we're trying to do is use that word refine again, but trying to look deeper into our desire and kind of come out the other end, as it were. We can use our desire if we don't just succumb to grabbing after the thing. We can say, well, what do I love about this even so-called non-spiritually thing like a car or something like that? So it is a particular approach that I'm sort of advocating that I think is important, because otherwise our sort of Dharma life will be too thin or something, because we've too quickly sort of got rid of things that we think don't belong there, whereas instead of that it's like we can include the things we desire, but not in a grasping way, actually trying to see what is the sort of deeper value that they're pointing to. Do you see? And so in a car it might be beauty, it might be freedom. I don't know, somebody might love football and they might think, that's not very spiritual, but actually maybe it's the team spirit, it's the sort of flow, it's the, So you actually start to look for what the deeper meaning is, and then you start to think, how can I keep taking that deeper, even with things that are sort of obviously a bit more spiritual, so-called, to use that word, well, like looking at something in very high art. You don't stop there, you think, well, that's beautiful, but can I look more deeply into it to see, to let that beauty take me even more deeply, yeah? So what you've got then is this complete trajectory that starts with our ordinary human responsiveness, kind of goes up to Shraddha. As that responsiveness encounters the actual deeper values of human growth all the way to enlightenment, the Dharma, the truth itself, the Sangha, the spiritual community, it becomes Shraddha, responsive. And then that carries on all the way up to enlightenment itself, which I find tremendously exciting, because it's all on this same trajectory that just starts off with loving fast cars or something. Do you see what I mean? That it's not actually something we're trying to impose on our human nature from outside, but neither are we just indulging all our whims and fancies. We're actually trying to take what we respond to and take it deeper, yeah? I'll pause again, because this is, I want us to make sure we've got this right, because it's quite important. Does that, yes, go on.
I remember my Tribanda talking about mental proliferation.
Yes.
When you just go off in your thoughts.
Yeah.
Fantasizing about stuff.
Yeah.
And like me at the beginning of this practice, I find it quite difficult to understand this kind of imaginative faculty, because you're sort of not knowing whether I'm just going off on fantasies or whether this is what you're talking about. So it seems to be that the understanding of this imagination is very different from what we usually do. Like it's not a fantasy.
Exactly, yeah. And are you starting to notice the difference?
Oh, well.
No, go on, just even a little bit. Do you feel like you have had times when you've seen where it's different?
Yeah, but then I'm not sure whether it's understanding. It's more of a feeling, more physical in a sense.
Yeah,
when that happens.
Yeah. Well, maybe one thing that can help us, I think it is, and maybe it's a life's work really to work out the distinction between imagination and fantasy. I mean, there's a very long section on this in the book, so I would recommend that. But maybe that's where we can go back to our stages of the path, yeah? So if you do it, almost going through them one at a time, so integration helps imagination to be grounded in our actual experience and not be off in prapancha. Positive emotion means that, well, it's coming from a positive place, yeah? It's wholesome. The more we develop more positive emotion, the more we can trust our imagination to be wholesome. The more we're sort of practice, if you can say that, receptivity, the more we will be open to that something that's sort of beyond, that taste of the beyond our everyday life. But very importantly, the more we're practicing spiritual death, the more we can be sure that we're not just in some sort of the kind of more dangerous kind of fantasy. So there might be the fantasy that's just like daydreaming of prapancha. That's one kind of fantasy, which is not imagination, but it's not, it's not actually dangerous. But there's another kind of fantasy that's it's a real delusion, delusions of grandeur, or even a sort of, the dangerous delusions when we think, I don't know, that you've been. Well, actually, I'm not even going to say what they are, but you can imagine, the kind of more dangerous type of fantasy. In order to guard against that, we've got to be actively practicing spiritual death, actually practicing letting go, actually studying the Dharma, actually making sure that it's not just some egotistical thing, that we're calling imagination, but actually we've completely lost the plot, and actually become a danger to ourselves and other people, some sort of religious fanatic type thing. Yeah, so I think imagination is very, very important and does become Shraddha, and it is, we have to be careful with it as well, and that's why the other stages of the path they both come before imagination and sort of after it. Do you see what I mean? They both lead up to us having a more open imagination, but also we have to practice them to make sure what we think is imagination properly isn't just us going off in some crazy egotistical fantasy or just getting lost in prapancha or so on. Yeah. So that's all very important. Yeah. So what I'd really again, all that the main thing I can refer to is to really read those last couple of chapters. Ideally reread the whole book once the course is finished, but particularly those last couple of chapters. It's great actually what Maitreya Bhanda writes about imagination. It's very close to his own heart. He writes about it particularly well, what imagination is and what imagination isn't. So that's in, I think it's chapter 7 or chapter 8 of the book. But what we're going to do now is two things. So I'm going to have to take us ahead, because what I want us to do is spend a little bit of time, now we're on week 8 of the course, thinking about our next steps. So what we're going to do after this course is finished. So if we want to continue in a Dharma life, a life of value, we're going to have to do 3 things really. You could sum up in 3 ways. We're going to have to keep practicing the Dharma. That means keep meditating and keep practicing kindness, generosity in our lives. We're going to have to cultivate a Dharma lifestyle. That means coming to the centre, keeping coming to the centre. It means trying to get on retreat if we can. It means actually looking at our lives and seeing, really asking ourselves quite honestly, is what we're spending our time doing, especially our work, for example, is that helping us in our practice? And can we make it? What could we do about that if it's not? Yeah, because how we spend our time will really affect how we're able to practice. So we can really look at that. So if we're involved in a job that's very unethical or that's just horribly stressful, that is going to work against us. Sometimes that's unavoidable, but sometimes there's changes we can make. But it means really having an honest look at our lifestyle and saying, is this supporting my truest values? And if it's not, are there things what can I do about that? If there is anything. If there isn't, then we have to practice patience, yeah? If there isn't anything we can do, we can still be a Dharma practitioner, yeah, because it's always possible to practice. But if there is, it's worth having a look. And then the third thing, and this is very important, which is Dharma service. Find ways to serve something bigger than ourselves. And how we might chunk this down even more to translate it is think about, I want you, in a minute we're going to go into pairs, I think, and just think about, well, what are we going to do next? What class are we going to come to? We could keep coming to this, because I'd really advise keeping coming to this class. For example, next week I'm going to be teaching the mindfulness of breathing and the Metta Bhavana meditations for those of you who haven't learned them yet. So I'm going to be teaching them over the next 2 weeks at this class, and Maitreya Bhanda is going to be teaching in this room. So just in a way, next week will be like just carrying on with the course with a few more people. You could think about joining a class team. We always need people on the teams for classes to help with the tea and so on. do come and talk to me if you'd like to do that. Of course, retreat, so the summer retreat, my trail band is leading it, as well as Shraddha Gita, who's another. She's a really, really lovely teacher at the centre, very, very experienced. So, I won't say more about retreats because we've said it every week, but really, the summer retreat would be great. If you want to know more about the sort of path of progression in Buddhism in this community, you could, if you wanted to, come along in a few weeks' time and watch some people having their mitra ceremony. So a mitra is someone who has decided that they want to deepen their practice within this community and takes part in I was going to say a little ritual. It's little in one way, but very significant ritual to mark that. And we're going to be having those rituals on the 9th of July. It's a Sunday in the evening. So if you want to just come along and watch that, take part, everybody's welcome, just to see what that means, what that means. So they are some of the things that you can do. Of course, you might, it's completely up to you. You might think at the end of this course, oh, actually, I'm not going to do any of those things. I just wanted to come on the course and now I'm going to do something else completely. And that's fine as well. But I think it's quite good to make it conscious. So even if you think, okay, now that's enough for now. I've learned enough. I'm going to have a break, or this isn't for me. I mean, I hope it is for you, given that you're still here after 8 weeks. But we can just make that conscious as well. So what I'd like you to do, the time's gone so fast, is get into pairs, and I'm literally going to give you like 5 minutes altogether to say what you're going to do next, right? So you're going to have to be like super snappy. I'm going to ring a bell after 2.5 minutes, and then you'll be swapping over, right? So go into pairs just now.